Good afternoon and welcome everybody to Midwest Family Dashes, Pushing Your Business Through the Pandemic webinar. My name is Teresa Tim. I'm the General Manager at Midwest Family Dash, and I'm just delighted that you're here to join us today. You know, for the last 3 weeks, we've all been scrambling, trying to adjust to government restrictions, being reactionary to the world around us. And I believe that we're not only dealing with a health crisis right now, but a crisis of hope in our communities. So today, I think it's time for us to pivot. Today's presentation by Matt and Chuck are gonna help you be proactive. It's gonna help you fight the fear with hope. All of the people at Midwest Family wanna be resources for you now and in the future. And one of the things that we do for you is bring national experts to help our clients navigate this ever-changing world of marketing. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the two speakers that we have on our webinar today that will be sharing their knowledge and experience with you. The first one is Matt Sunshine, and he's a managing partner for the Center for Sales Strategy and Lead G2, a company that specializes in improving sales performance and lead generation. Matt's frequently serving as a keynote speaker and moderator. He provides audiences with expertise related to lead generation, inbound marketing, digital marketing, sales process, growing sales organizations, finding and developing sales superstars. And what he'll be focusing on today is being productive while we're working from home. My mentor and friend, Chuck Mefford's been a consultant and trainer for many Midwest Family markets over the last 3 decades. He's an author, a marketing strategist, a national speaker, and founding partner of Brandsformation. It's a marketing firm with one goal: transforming good businesses in America into great brands. For over 30 years, he's been building awareness for small businesses across the nation in big ways. And before Matt and Chuck join us, I'd like to share a few headlines from recent blogs that I've come across. And as we look at advancing my slides, hopefully it's not advancing. Hey, co-host, whether it's Chuck or Matt, can you advance the slide and see if it will work for you? Yes, no?
I click and not happening.
I'm
Nothing
clicking.
on my
Oh, there we
end
go.
either.
Okay,
Oh, there we
thanks.
go.
So this first one comes from a Forbes blog. When a recession comes, don't stop advertising. As a popular adage says, when times are good, you should advertise. When times are bad, you must advertise. And there's a number of examples of brands that benefited from maintaining their ad budgets during economic downturns. There's Kellogg's, Toyota, Amazon. Stories are legendary. And we're going to talk a little bit about this later today when Chuck gets into talking about some comeback companies. Another one from Ad Age. Ford pulls national vehicle ads. The spots were rapidly produced starting late last week as Ford execs realized their normal marketing plans would no longer cut it as the coronavirus pandemic overtook nearly every facet of our American lives. Another one from the SBA, COVID-19 small businesses guidance and loan resources, particularly in marketing. It's critical to communicate openly with your customers about the status of your operations when protective measures are implemented and how your customers, will be protected when they visit your businesses. Promotions may also help incentivize customers who may be reluctant to patronize your business at this time. When we talk today with our two experts, our agenda is going to be as follows. Matt is going to talk about key strategies from working from home, and especially the business owners that are on this call when you're sort of stuck at home. How do you communicate with your customers? Chuck's going to talk about how we fight the fear factor. We'll talk about the right creative messaging during this time and talking about some comeback companies. At the end, there will be time for some Q&A. If you've got questions, you can go ahead and put those in the chat. And at the end of our discussion today, I'll make sure we get to as many of those as we can. But I'd like to actually welcome Matt Sunshine and have him take us through and help us navigate. How do we work from home, Matt? What are some suggestions and tips you can give our listeners on this call today?
Thanks, Teresa. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here and excited to share with you some of our strategies for work from home. I'm also very excited to be on this webinar with Chuck, as I've seen his slides, and you guys are going to be blown away by the information that he shares. So where someone is saying they can't hear Teresa, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, someone in the chat was just messaging that.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. So let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. Well, as I was saying, I'm very excited. I can hear, not sure why it says that. Okay, very good.
We're good.
All right, so as we get going, technology is a wonderful thing. I am excited for you to see what Chuck has. I've seen his slides. You're going to be blown away. It's going to be actionable stuff that you can use immediately. And I hope to provide you with some of the exact same things. So if you turn to this next slide, what you're going to see is the first of 4 categories that I broke down working from home. A little bit on my company is I work for the Center for Sales Strategy and Lead G2, and we are a virtual company and have been for years and years and years. We have nearly 40 full-time employees, and all of us work remotely. 100% remote. So we have a
Matt, our slides are not advancing again. I don't understand why.
I'm going to have to just really be descriptive while you figure this out, but yeah. I can do that. I can do that. All right. So
there we go. Okay.
There you go. So the first.
There we go. All right. Thank you, technology. Thanks, Matt. Go ahead.
The first of the 4 is you need to have a proper mindset. And so what do we mean when we say a proper mindset? First of all, you got to know when to start and end your day. It's when you start to work from home. What you realize is that your work life and your home life really start to merge together. And while if you only did that for one day, that might be okay. But when you start to do it over time, you realize that the very best thing to do is to set up some parameters and know when am I at work and when am I not at work. And you should communicate that with the people in your house and let them know I'm not on vacation. I am actually at work. The other thing that we found is it's not that you work less when you're home. You actually end up working a whole lot more. It's not uncommon to hear from people that they sat down at their desk at 8:30 in the morning, and the next thing they know, they looked up, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they had not taken a break. And that's not what you want, right? So you want to make sure that you give yourself scheduled breaks. It is far better to take 3 or 4 scheduled 10 or 15-minute breaks than it is to all day long kind of work and break and work and break and work and break. So you want to give yourself some scheduled breaks. That's a best practice. You also want to define your space in your house or your apartment or wherever you're working. You want to define your space with the least amount of distractions. Now, for many people, that might be a spare bedroom, or if you're fortunate, you have a study in your home, or it might be the dining room that doesn't get used very often, or a living room that doesn't get used very often. I would refrain from making your workspace your bed, right? So I know people that when they first start working from home, they're like, oh, this is great. I just wake up in the morning and I just flip open my laptop and I'm still under the covers and I'm responding to email. I don't think that's working, right? That's still being in bed and responding to email, which is fine, but that's not working. I think working is when you set up and you have your paperwork that you might need, you have your laptop, you have your camera, you have you have a phone, you have a headset, you have all the things that you need to be productive. So define your space. The next thing is use a calendar. That's one of the biggest things that I see is that people typically only schedule their appointments. And what I would suggest is that you also need to schedule your activities. There are things that you naturally do when you're in the office or when you're in your work environment. There are things that you naturally do because that's the cadence that the organization runs at. Well, now you're at home and you're on your own schedule. And if you are not putting in your activities that are important, then what you end up doing is just being very reactive all day, responding to the emails and the phone calls that come in. And then also, last thing on the proper mindset is stay away from the distractions. hey, listen, I know that we're all very interested in what's going on in the news and what's going on with the COVID-19 virus and what does it mean and how much longer and all of that. And I get that. And I do think that you have to have that news information. But I would limit the amount of time that you spend paying attention to it when you're trying to work. So again, if you want to work and then take a break and check in with the news, that's good, but don't try to pay attention to the news and also pay attention to work at the exact same time. It doesn't always work out the very best. So that's proper mindset. On the next slide, I'm going to start talking about getting ready for work. And there's just a few things on this slide that I want to bring your attention to. Is number one is get ready for work. And I don't mean that you have to, if you're a guy and you normally wear a suit to the office. I'm not saying that you need to suit up and then before you sit down by your computer. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think people will do that. But I do think that you need to do whatever you need to do to trigger your mind to say, I am now getting ready for work. For some people, that's taking a shower. For some people, that is putting on a work appropriate, like a work appropriate shirt, whatever that is. I think you need to do that. And clothing, attire, sometimes can trigger that, right? It can absolutely trigger your mind to say, okay, I'm in work mode now. The next thing is communication, and again, I mentioned this earlier, but it's worth repeating. Is you really want to make sure that you communicate with your family or anyone else that is in your house that you are at work. You're not on vacation and sneaking away to check email, that you're actually at work. And then make time for social interaction. One of the fears I have with remote working is that people will stop talking to each other, and we'll live in a world where we just listen, that we just email each other and we just watch webinars with each other, but we won't ever have any social interaction. So make sure you and your company take the time to have social interaction between coworkers, but also make sure that you have time to have some social interaction with colleagues and clients and friends and all of that. So now let's get to the required tools. On this next slide, we're going to talk about the required tools. And I think these are essential if you're going to work from home. Number one is find the spot in your house that has good Wi-Fi. It's absolutely imperative that you have good Wi-Fi where you're set up. If you can be hardwired, that's better. Also, same goes for cell service. Make sure that you have a good headset. It's very, very difficult to be on a phone that you're holding in your hand all day long. It gets fatiguing, it gets tiring. You're not able to type when you're talking. So make sure that you have a good headset. And to that, make sure you know where your mute button is so that you can hit mute when you need to. If you're going to be working from home for an extended period of time, I recommend that you invest in a monitor and a printer, because those are some of the tools of the trade, and then access to office supplies. And almost every city in America has some sort of delivery system that you can get office supplies. And if you can do it with a local business, I highly recommend working with local businesses. For instant messaging, we use Teams, but if you don't have Teams, maybe you have Slack, or maybe you have some sort of other instant messaging service. I like using instant messaging internally because it's kind of like that water cooler talk that you can, rather than filling up your email, your inbox with email. And then the last thing is you need to have some sort of screen sharing video conference technology, whether it's Zoom like we're using now, or a GoToMeeting, or a Teams, or a Skype, or a whatever. There's a lot of these companies out there. You need to have one. And then the last thing to share with you today is communication. And how do you communicate when you're in a remote environment? Number one, be flexible. Be flexible and responsive. Realize that this is new to a lot of people, and we need to just have that. We have to be flexible on maybe the technology isn't working so good. But we also need to be responsive, because you are in a remote environment. I send you, or I ask you something and I don't hear back from you for 4 or 5, 6 hours or a day. I'm not confident that you even heard it or got my message. In an office, I would be able to just to see you, and you'd say, yeah, I'm on it. I'll get to you tomorrow. So be reasonable and responsive to when people are asking you things, so you can quickly get back to them and say, got your email, but it's going to be a day before you hear back from me. And then realize that technology comes with a learning curve. We're all figuring this out, and all of these technology platforms that we're on are constantly updating themselves, and you might be using a version that your colleague is not, and it just takes a moment. So I encourage everyone to be reasonable, and then be present, whether it's texting or calling or emailing. Be present for the people that you interact with, your colleagues and your customers and your prospects. Give them the attention as if you're there with them in person, and you'll have a much better experience. And with that, that concludes kind of my 4 big tips, and I will throw it back to either Teresa or Chuck to take it from here.
Okay, so Chuck, why don't you take over now and talk about fighting fear?
Yeah, I wish I had a name like Matt Sunshine, you know? How can you not wake up in the morning and be happy with a name like that, Matt? Excellent job. Thank you. We're going to talk about not only fear, but the right message, the right thing to say and not to say, and comeback companies. And let's just talk about fear real quick, all right? There are different types of fear. And you can go back to the original slide for a minute first, please. Is that when you're fighting fear, look at it 3 ways. One is the world, what we call it, outside your door. We know COVID-19, a 24/7 heavy news cycle, some with the intent of spreading and selling fear, and the stock market, and we even know that it's going to be worse now before it gets better. But all those are what are called fear is just the unknown. We don't, and that's what makes, if we know, at least we can deal with it, but not knowing is always the tough part. Now, the second level of fear is the world kind of inside our businesses, our cash flow. Are we going to, that's our O2, that's the way you breathe. You got to have cash flow or we're big trouble. Our rent, our mortgages, and the payroll, and our employee, and what about our customers and keeping our current ones, let alone continuing to find new ones to grow. So that's the second level. And now we're entered and have seen and living what I call the third level of fear, the fear at home. You've been living with your family now, face to face, 24/7 for a couple of weeks, your pets. And actually, this is the new face of fear, living inside your home. Now you can go to the next slide. And you know, spending a few weeks with your family, what can possibly go wrong in isolation, right? Watch The Shining and with your family as you get to know each other more. And as we know, there's some great seeds of benefit that always come out of these things these big challenges that we run into, and spending more time, reigniting relationships, doing what we say is important versus just making money. Here's our chance to do it, and might not have a chance to do that again. But this can be fear. Back here, if you want to know the real fear at home, here's the deepest fear of all that I see, and it's witnessed by what's happening in our marketplace on the next slide. And if you just hit click, I used to, this was a meme, I used to spin the toilet paper roll like I was a wheel of fortune, and now it's like I'm cracking a safe. So yeah, things have changed in a New York minute. So let's get into it and break this down in terms of the next slide. Fighting fear. We're really looking at 2 fronts here. It's not just fear, it's fear and COVID. And yeah, we're fearful about COVID, but if you look at the virus versus just fear, which of those is the worst? And frankly, it's fear. And by the way, we can control fear. We can't necessarily control the virus. But fear, think about it, has spread faster than the virus. Everyone has a level of fear. The virus, God forbid, hasn't reached everyone yet, and hopefully it never will. But fear is the thing that's out there right now. And you got to understand, things have been whipped up bigger than ever before. When I was in college many moons ago, one of my professors used to work for UPI, United Press International, and it was a big competitor of Associated Press, National News Services. His claim to fame actually was at Wounded Knee, when they had a big issue uprising at a reservation in, I think, the Dakotas, and it was a big story, and he was there covering the whole thing, and excellent coverage, and a great guy. And what he told me, he'd say, Chuck, he says, the news business will never change, and it's always the same, you know. And here it is in one sentence: if it bleeds, it leads. And right now, fear sells for a lot of people. So you got to understand there's a lot of going on here. Now, don't get me wrong. To be sure, this is very serious stuff. We know that, and it's scary. But panic is optional. We have a choice how to react to anything that comes at us in life. And we can react positively or we can react negatively. But again, it's our choice how to do that. But understand, fear is not a friend of good decision making. Rarely is panic a good plan. And you need to understand what's happening. We call it the fog factor. Have you ever been in London, England, and seen London pea soup fog? Literally, you can hold your hand in front of your face and not see your hand. It's that thick. Well, here's what scientists have said and measured. If you can take 7 square city blocks of fog and condense it down into physical water, how much actual water would that be? 18 gallons? Would it be 8 gallons, 8 pints? That's what they drink in the UK, by the way. Or 8-ounce glass of water. 7 square blocks of London thick pea soup. How much physical actual water is it? And the answer is number 4, an 8-ounce glass of water. And that's what happens when fear and the unknown is, it becomes bigger than life. We start fogging in our minds. And when you really get to the end and when you really face and you see what happened and have the advantage of looking back, actually, you realize this was a lot about nothing. It was about an 8-ounce glass of water when you really get down to see what we're dealing with. And frankly, you know what the number one contagious thing is in America? It's not COVID-19. It's not even fear. It's on the next slide. It's a word you and I know as hope. Nothing is more contagious than hope. Here's the first thing about hope. People, we've been down this road called the unknown many times before. If you're as old as I am, you've been down a lot more times before. But just take the last 20 years. In the last one, we had Y2K. The world was coming to an end. It didn't. We had 9/11. Pretty serious stuff. Even 2008 was pretty. And yet, when all those things in some cases looked hopeless, we found a way to pull through. And we always do. And that's number 2, because it's the American spirit. We plan for the worst. We hope for the best. But by God, we'll take this mountain. We'll go around it. We'll go over it. We'll go through it, or we'll just make this mountain into a gold mine. But we will persevere. And kind of like a plane, number 3, you need a little resistance once in a while, frankly. No,
Sorry.
we're good. Just go back. That's okay. And in other words, I used to be a pilot, and one of the things they teach you when you start flying is when you take off, okay, you don't take off with the wind because you won't get enough lift. You don't do it sideways. It'll blow. Where you take off, you always take off into the wind. In other words, you need resistance to soar. We've gone through Y2Ks, 9/11s. I've gone through 19% mortgage rates and $5 gas and all the other stuff that we've gone through. But you know what? When you go through these periods, you tighten up, you're a better business person, you get everything running. And then when we come out of this, which we always will, and there's a big rebound forecast, by the way, coming in 3rd or 4th quarter, then you're ready to go. And you're better equipped than ever before, like we emerged out of 2008. So there's some benefit, but hope is there, and hope is eternal. And if we keep focusing on what we can do instead of focusing on what we can't, we're going to get a lot further. So what can we do? Let's get into the right message. What we know about the message is this, and it's huge. On the next slide is consumption is way up. Huge. In fact, Nielsen, one of the big rating services in America for broadcast and digital now, is that we're up some 60%. In fact, look at what it was just a year ago or two. If you look on the next slide, 12 hours a day, in 3rd quarter, in the middle, the second bar down, 2019, 12 hours a day, we're consuming media of one form or another: live TV, internet, radio, Blu-ray. The big gainer from 2 years ago to last year was using apps and searching the web on your smartphone, almost doubled. And now they're saying it's basically 24/7. People are home. Nothing's ever like this. Everything's come to a stop. And media consumption is through the roof. They're watching, they're listening, they're reading more than ever before. Maybe it's because they want to get away from their family. I don't know. But the deal is, it's up, and they're attuned. And the question is, what do we want to do with that? That's the million-dollar question. The head of Nielsen said this: the knee-jerk reaction from advertisers at a time of crisis is typically to pull back or defer spending. And that makes sense logically. However, With COVID-19, it's characterized by a situation where increased time at home means expanded media time and heightened consumer attention. And for brands looking to authentically connect with the consumer during this difficult time or offer a solution, this is a time to lean in. Watch Jersey Mike's right now. They've taken a huge step in leaning in right now, telling you how they're going to deliver that to you free to your door. And that's a sample of a product cycle that we call food and entertainment, the now buyer. And a lot of people like Walgreens, well, you can buy anything through the store through their drive-through window. And so those are immediately type thing. And most of those things, I think we're even communicating right now. In fact, on the next slide, the whole thing with communication is, if you're going to communicate, whether to your current customers and you've got something to tell them right now about your hours, and whether it's through social media or broadcast, people don't want pandering. Number one, we get it. I don't want to be cliche, and you don't either, but I think we know we're all in this together by now, and I think we know about washing our hands and stuff. But it kind of hit me, and it's probably hit you by now if you have an email address. And that's the example on the next slide. There's an article just last week in the Wall Street Journal. All right. The buyer's emails from my companies may not be actually calming, because what's the collective effect in your email right now? Everyone and their brother has sent you an email how they're washing their hands and what they're doing. Hey, unless I need you today, I really don't care. Like the president of Levi said, I don't think you care about buying a pair of jeans right now. That's not important. And if you're sensitive to that, you'll start communicating more in what important to people. And short term is going to differ from long term. And again, I think part of this whole process and part of the unknown in marketing is we want to be like Wayne Gretzky. We don't want to play where the puck is right now. We want to play where the puck's going to be. And we know this is going to be over, the lockdowns. We know this thing's going to emerge. The question is when, and are you and I going to be ready for when that's going to happen? So on the next slide, things happening right now. I'll give you a couple examples. One of my clients up in St. Cloud, Minnesota, Bradshaw and Bryant, is a personal injury attorney. So, I mean, a day after everything started shutting down in the land of blue eyes and blue ears in Minnesota, here's what they do. And this guy's been on the air forever. Everyone knows his voice. So he didn't even say who he is. He just did these 5-second series of ads as kind of a public service thing. Right out
Please
of the
remember
gate.
to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. Sing happy birthday twice while you do it. Please remember to call or email the elderly close to your heart. They'd love to hear from you. Please remember to wash your hands so often that you can't remember how many times you already have each day.
And the one we added to that was, this is Michael Bryant, and you need to listen to the police. And then the song would come in, don't stand so close, in the age of social distancing, they call it. And so, just a quick in and out, that's over now. It's again, that's already dated. And because really, if you want to get down to it, and if you look at most of the current survey, people want to just get back to being normal, whatever that is. The new normal, the old normal. We just want to get back and maybe not be cooped up and get back to our jobs and feel. So there's a lot of angst going on, and the more we can be and talking, I think, about relationships, normalcy, all those, that's going to work a lot better. All right. I think our as a business owner, myself, I think my customers, they want comfort more than they want advice right now. They don't want me selling products. They want them to know that I care, that I'm here to help them, and what can I do above and beyond what I'm doing now to get them through this. We don't want to play this down. We have to empathize. I think you absolutely have to be positive. But understand you got two kind of product cycles. The short-term people are probably doing everything you can now to let you know I can go to the curb, but there's a lot of people long-term, kitchen places, HVAC, that it's a different kind of thing because you don't necessarily need them now. But some companies still communicate, and it's not so much about the now, it's more about long-term and not branding. It's really about bonding. This is a pretty emotional time. And then let's face it, if you think about most of your business, it's built on relationships and emotion, not logic. So this is a great time to show your heart and do things that maybe you normally and communicate in a very emotional way, like storytelling example. But your job as a business owner is to help that customer. The customer is the hero of their story, and your job is to help that hero get to its happy ending. So remember, as you communicate to your customers, especially long term, is let them know you're there and you're there to help them get to where they're going. And your job as Obi-Wan Kenobi is to help them navigate whatever challenge it is they have when they come to you, their problem. If you're a kitchen place, it's how do I get my new kitchen? If it's a pest control, it's this. If it's a jeweler, it's that. But customers come to us because they have challenges. They're trying to do something with their life, reward someone, tell someone I love them, to get something, but they have a problem or challenge. So if we can show customers how we help them with their challenge and how they can continue on their journey and be the hero of their story, that's bonding long term and showing that you care emotionally and you're thinking beyond what's going to happen the next few days, because we know this is a long term battle. But we also know that if we keep plugging through and have a plan, we get through it like we did before. In fact, on the next slide,
I was thinking about all the time folks are probably spending in their kitchens. That much time.
I don't know what happened there.
No,
but
that was okay. That was an example of Brad. I had forgotten on where he just talked about lately. You're in your kitchen. I'm going to show you how you can measure your own kitchen now. And he tells people to come to his Facebook and go to our Instagram, and he just shows you in a little quick video how you can measure your own kitchen and start your kitchen dreaming process right now. You're not stuck, frustrated, not being able to do anything. Because before, usually you call a guy out to do the measurements. And because the whole thing with kitchens, if you don't measure it right and you're off a 1/8 of an inch, you're in big problems by the time you get to the end of the installation. But it doesn't matter our business, there are things we can do to help our customers, again, continue on their journey, long-term or short-term. And the biggest thing is people. My father, the second thing that I remember him always saying, the second biggest thing he probably said in my life is, he said, Chuck, the only lesson we've learned from history is we've learned nothing from the lessons of history. We keep doing the same stupid things over and over again, the same wars and the same depressions and the same. But you know what occurred to me is there are lessons of history, and the choice is up to you and I right now. Is do we want to learn from those lessons of history, or do we want to continue the patterns from the past? And here's what I mean by that on the next slide. If you're going to market in a downturn, okay, if you're going to push through this pandemic, number one is there are winners and losers when it comes to navigating recessions. And I mean, they have been for the last 50 years, if not longer, detailed the patterns and the behaviors and the strategies, by the way, that either propelled or undermined a company's sales and performance. You can see a lot of those if you go to harvardbusinessreview.com and read the case studies. And one of the big ones they talk about from 2009, you'll see, is Walmart. And what they did and how they went from number 16 in the nation in terms of share of voice, to number 1 and never turned back since then, because a lot of people hunkered down and quit. The big discovery they found when you looked at all these companies, there were kind of 3 things that all these companies did. And big discovery number 1 is that the successful companies, when things like this happen, when it changed in a New York second, the first thing they did is nothing. They didn't react. They collected data. And there's a great story about the World War II fighter pilot that they teach you, is if you're a pilot, that when you ever get in trouble and things start going wrong and you're disoriented, which can happen in bad weather or a battle, they train you is your instinct is to pull back so you get up and away from everything but they tell you freeze, and if you get in trouble, the first thing is to do nothing, freeze and evaluate what's going. And so this pilot was in a fight at the time, and some things blew up around him. He was disoriented, and his gut reaction was to pull up, but his training kicked in. He froze, did nothing, and he looked up, and he was looking at the ground and realized he was flying upside down. Had he pulled up, he actually would have been pulling down an auger into the ground. So training saved his life, and we need to train ourselves. So when we're faced with these situations, the first thing is do nothing. Number 2 is look where you always should look, and that never changes. What are your customers' needs? You know, if it's short term in your Walgreens, yeah, tell people, hey, you can shop through my window now, or do things you never could do. But long term is let people know you're there whenever this emerges, you're there to help them get where they're going, because they still want to get their kitchen fixed, or they got someone to say I love you, or they're going to have some problems, or why not? If you're a car repair, go to them and fix their car right now, or change the oil. There's some things that we're all changing our business models, both short term and probably long term, based on what's happening. But it's always based on customer focus, customer focus, customer focus. And then when you determine here's where they're at with this situation, then don't get out the machete, but get a scalpel and design a effective communications program that you're going to need long term. we got to keep looking where the puck's going to be. And if you want to see what happened in the past, it's crystal clear. On the next slide, and we don't have time to go through all these case studies, but it's amazing what's happened. McGraw-Hill did a big study just on the recession of the 80s, for instance, and they looked at 600 companies in the 81 to 82 recession, which also involved high interest rates and all sorts of stuff going on there. So oil prices going up, and that's when we had the oil embargo, by the way. But what happened to the good businesses? How did they survive? What happened? Well, the ones that had a program and continued to communicate and continued to market, by the way, within 3 years, by 1985, those businesses had an average sales increase of 256%, just 3 years after the recession. The ones that didn't continue, that hunkered down, closed down, and did other things, they had no sales increase. Depression, I could go back to the 20s and show you Kellogg's, how they were neck and neck with Post. Post pulled back, was conservative. It was run by a board by then. CW had died, and his daughter had the company. She wasn't running it. You know her as Marjorie Merriweather Post, who bought a little piece of land on the lake shore of Florida called Mar-a-Lago that she built many years ago. But so don't cry for CW Post, but when they went at it head to head, they were the two biggest cereal companies in the world. There were 100 cereal companies in 1929 in the Great Depression. Most of them shut down, pulled back. Post totally shut down their marketing. Kellogg, still run by Will Kellogg, the brother of Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, said, this is the time to push because no one's out there. I can talk to them all by myself. And he doubled, actually. Kellogg's doubled their ad budget. And within 3 years, Post was downside where their sales were down 20 to 30%. Kellogg had a 30% profit margin in the middle of the Great Depression. It was phenomenal. And you can go on and on with Toyota taking over VW as the #1 import in 1976. And so they all have their great story. Even local businesses, Steve's Pest Control, who maintained his market share, talking to his customers, and emerged because everyone else kind of cut back in the pest control area in Columbia and Jeff City of Missouri. He emerged as the single largest pest control company locally owned in America today. It does about $8 million single location. But I can tell you about a kitchen guy who went backwards, suffered because there weren't a lot of people building kitchens necessarily in 2008 when things shut down. But he's the biggest, baddest kitchen guy in Springfield, Missouri. And some of you are listening there right now because all I got to do is say kitchen and they're going to say Kitchenland Brad Schrock, because he's always been there talking to them 24/7 around the clock. And they have to say yes or no to Brad before anyone else. So that's the key: is, are we communicating with our current customers, and more importantly, what's our plan to get new ones? Because the floodgates are going to open up, and if we're not ready, it's going to be too late. So now's the time to know we're going to get through this. It's just a matter of how soon. And as I said in the next slide, yeah, we're fighting fear. Yeah, but understand a lot of it's fog. Plan for the worst, hope for the best, start saying the right thing, and certainly look up some of these companies that have this track record, the winners, and look at the strategies and the tactics they employed, and they're just incredibly powerful. So much so I'm going to start a new series actually called Comeback Companies, profiling, because I find it fascinating that there is a trend, there is a blueprint that most of these companies follow to be successful. Teresa, I'll turn it back to you. Remember,
and again, just making sure we look at attitude, and just making sure we keep our heads about ourselves. I have received a couple of questions while this was going on, and we do have a few minutes for some Q&A. And what I'd like to do is throw this one to Matt. A person on the call says, I'm a business owner that's working remotely. How should I keep in touch with my customers while we are closed?
Yeah, great question. Right? I mean, I think you have to keep in touch with your customers while you're closed. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know how you're taking precautions. Let them know what your plan is for when you will open. Let them know the things that are going on. I mean, people like those connections, and I think you should tell them in as many ways as you can. So utilize social media to get your message out. If you have a database, utilize your database. If you can, you could, there's lots, any way that you meet, I always say meet people in their medium, not yours, right? So know where your customers are, and wherever your customers are, that's where you should communicate them. But what I would communicate to them is what you have going on, how you're dealing with this, how you're going to get back, what you're doing for your employees. I live in Dallas, Texas, and there's a local car dealership that sent out an email and just gave everyone an update and said, just want to let you know that while we're not open during this time, we are taking care of our employees, and we've all contributed and giving to a food shelter. I mean, it was very nice. It kind of said, oh, you know what, those guys are good guys. So I definitely think you must be communicating.
Thank you. Chuck, this one's for you. I'm taking the advice of my rep and sticking with marketing, and I've just changed messagings for now because my store isn't open. What is the right time to start asking people to do business with me without sounding insensitive?
I don't know that I would ask anyone to do business with you right now until we know when this thing is going to be over and the lockdown's over, and we see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train. So I'd be careful about that. Again, it's what are you doing for me now above and beyond what you'd normally do, and that's where I echo what Matt's saying is, it was so, again, it's about bonding and building this relationship, because these are the kind of things that will pay off forever if you go that extra mile right now and deliver your prescription, which they never did before, and those kind of little things. And they cost more at the time when we least can afford it. But these kind of things, going above and beyond and wowing our clients with these things that above than what we normally, that builds lifetime customers. They don't forget those. Not everyone, but most people remember that. And that pays huge dividends, certainly long term. But until I think people can feel like we're starting to come over the top and there's an end to this thing, that would be maybe when. And again, it's not so much sales, and yeah, I would be thinking about promotions and ways to get things jump started. I call it back to business, the B2B now, and that's where we want to be thinking ahead of the puck. But it's, again, how do you help your customer on their journey? Talk about how you solve their problems. That's what they're interested in. That's what's in their heart. Show me how you make my life easier, quicker, faster. How I can treat my kids better. Wherever I'm going in my journey, show me I can make my journey better. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. And be just so transparent and real. It's an opportunity now when you're doing your, video conference, have your dog that maybe not barking, but we're all at home now and we're all a little more informal. And I think it's good to not turn into a slob, but people like to see, I think they're interested in that concert at home with Fox and iHeart. I think half the fun was seeing where Alicia Keys lived and what their house looked like too. So use that as an opportunity to bond. The more you reveal of yourself to your customers, the more they feel like they know you and feel connected to you as well.
Thank you. And we've got time for one more. Matt, this one's for you. This crisis will end. Lots of people are being laid off or furloughed, and business doors have been closed. How do you think the stimulus plan will help our economy bounce back?
That's yours, Matt.
Yeah, I'll take it. I think it's going to be a big bounce. I really do. I think that people are, we're a consumer-driven economy. This country thrives and excels because we spend money. That's what we do. And for the last 3 weeks, and who knows for however much longer this lasts, we've been told to stay inside, and we've been limited and restricted to really what we can purchase, right? Groceries and take in and pizza, take in, carry out. I think as soon as we're able to go back outside and it gets released, I think that it's going to be a rush of consumer spending. And I also think that there's going to be a lot of local consumer spending, because I think we all kind of know, without anyone ever telling us, I think we all kind of know that the local businesses need our help. They need our dollars coming back in through their door to survive. And I think all of us will be good stewards of that, and we will do just that. Where we might normally purchase something from Amazon, I think we'll go the extra mile and make sure that we purchase it from someone locally, just because. And with all the checks about to be written from the government, there's 125 million checks about to be written. There's a lot of money about to come back in, and I wouldn't want to miss out on it.
The market sure feels that way. What 6 million people unemployment, and yet the market's up 200 points. They've already factored that in. They're looking for the bounce, and a lot of people are talking about the big bounce to come.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Matt Sunshine, Chuck Mefford, we appreciate your time that you spent with our clients and Midwest Family staff today. We are out of time. A recording of this webinar will be available to you shortly, and we'll email you a link when it's ready. Again, I want to thank you all for attending. Stay optimistic, stay well, and we will get through this together and be stronger for it when this crisis is behind us. Thanks, everybody, and make it a great day today.